Hi, welcome to my subject matter experts interviews with people who have expertise in areas that we're studying in our UCLA class. I'm your instructor, Cyndy McDonald, and I'm so glad to be able to welcome you today and have you listen to another UCLA alum, April Miller. So, April, I'm so glad to have you here today. And today we're going to talk about neurodivergent students and how they can prepare for college. So glad to have you here, April.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It doesn't seem that long ago that you took my class on this subject and became our class expert, working and talking about students who have learning differences.
Well, this
So
is an area of passion and importance for me, so I'm always glad to have an opportunity to share what I know with others.
So tell us a little bit more about that. What did your background, how does it contribute to that passion that you have for helping students?
Sure. So I was a speech language pathologist for 15 years, and during that time, I worked with students really from birth to age 18. And I had the opportunity to work as a college professor. And so I taught undergraduate courses and I supervised graduate students in learning how to do evaluations and develop treatment plans and work with families. And when I worked with graduate students, a lot of the students would say to me, so after 12th grade, what happens to these students who are on the spectrum or who have ADHD, dyslexia, and other challenges? Those students who barely got through high school but want to go on to college. Can they go on to college? And if they do, how do they find the colleges that support them? And at the time, I knew nothing about it. So I started to go online. I started to read and learn. I started to go to conferences to get more information. And I got really excited to find out that there are several hundred colleges that have developed very extensive programs and supports for neurodivergent students. And I also realized that there was this whole profession of educational consulting and people that could specialize in working with neurodivergent students as an educational consultant. So I found out about the UCLA program. One thing led to the next thing. Here I was in your class, Cyndy, getting ready to graduate. And now this is what I do full time in my practice. I exclusively support students who are diverse learners.
And all of us have learned in lots of different ways, but neurodivergent students have particular needs. And transitioning, as you said, from high school to college, I think that's one of the areas we as counselors across the board, it's an area that's not addressed enough. And I just recently had a conversation with John Burdick from Cornell, and we talked about that a little bit as well. So now that you've immersed yourself and become an expert in this area, what are some of the things that you see in terms of skills that students need in order to transition successfully from high school to college?
Well, so I do a package with my clients called a profile evaluation. And in that evaluation, I interview a student and I also interview their parents to look at 4 developmental domain areas. And so the first area is looking at independent living skills, and I have a really good conversation with the student to talk about a bunch of different skills. And as I go through this interview with Cyndy, I have a document that has all of this written down so that your students can refer to that. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of those skills. Some of them include the ability to know what your diagnosis is, if you're on medication for your diagnosis, the dosage, and to be able to share that information in a health center at your college. If you have another diagnosed illness, you need to be able to know that the medications you're on for your other disabilities aren't going to interact with them, and then there's other things like laundry, waking yourself up in the morning, managing your schedule, and a variety of other day-to-day living skills. So that's the first area that I look at. The second area I look at beyond the independent day-to-day living is academic readiness skills. And so this is basic skills like the ability to take notes, the ability to study and prepare for quizzes and comprehensive exams. Also, the ability to navigate assignments and break them down into their components and complete complicated assignments. Beyond academic skills, a third area I look at, which really is a combination of two areas, executive function skills and self-advocacy skills. And you'll notice as I'm talking about all of this, Cyndy, these are skills that all students need
Right.
to be successful in college. But neurodivergent students specifically often have had parents, tutors, coaches, facilitators, therapists who've been helping them and scaffolding for them and with them to manage these things from K through 12. And when they go off to college, I need to assess where they're at with being able to manage these things on their own. So executive function skills, the first one is time management, and then of course, organization, task initiation, task completion, turning things in on time. And there's a whole host of other executive functioning skills. So I really talk to students to find out what this looks like in their day-to-day life. And if they're not able to answer my questions, then that tells me that these skills are in deficit. And then self-advocacy skills, which is hugely important. They need to have the confidence and the competence to know what learning supports have enabled them to be successful in high school, so that when they're looking at colleges, they can contact the learning support office and say, these are the things that I need. What do you provide for your students? And then they need to go through a whole process of applying to get accommodations put in place for them to have and use while they're at college. And the fourth area I look at, last but definitely not least, is social emotional skills. And as we know, the pandemic has had a lot of impacts on all students in terms of anxiety and depression, and knocking down their communication skills, and their confidence. And a lot of students who are neurodivergent during the pandemic had one of two experiences. Either they loved being on Zoom for school because they got to just be isolated and not have to deal with peers and teachers and just be at home behind a screen. Or like my students who have attentional issues, they found Zoom school to be intolerable and they were not able to be successful because they didn't have the executive functioning skills to be able to manage, learning online. So these social skills and these emotional regulation skills are imperative, for our students, not just to manage their own mental health and physical health and well-being, but also navigating how they move around in negotiation with relationships with peers, with faculty at college, with staff at the college. So that's an area that since the pandemic, I really do a lot more probing. I spend a lot of time on Zoom with my students to reinforce whatever social skills and communication skills they have, and then also to help them become aware of where they've got some deficit. And there are some resources that, I refer students to when they have challenges in any of these four areas that I've talked about.
So what kind of things would you refer them to? What would be appropriate for them?
Sure. So when I meet with students that are in high school and I can see that they have executive function challenges, there are a lot of practitioners that offer executive function coaching, and they offer it online. And then there's people who offer it in person. So you can think of it like academic tutoring, but instead of working on the content in a subject area like math or science, you're working on your organizational skills. You may have a coach that you meet with at the beginning of the week to help you organize your time and your life schedule for the week, to make sure that you fit in all the things that you need to do. Some students go online to organizations like Focus Collegiate, which is centered in Boston. Also Virtual Hall, which is part of an organization called Mansfield Hall. They do virtual coaching. Beacon College has a phenomenal executive function coaching program that's virtual, that students can do during their junior year of high school or even their senior year of high school. So, and aside from these, there are many others. I'm just mentioning these three because they're ones that I've sent a lot of students to and had a lot of success with. In terms of the social skills, that's a bigger challenge, Cindy, because there aren't a lot of programs out there that exist to help students with social skills. And actually, even in the college campus settings, there aren't a lot of social skills programs. But the two that exist now are peers, which is PEERS, and that is actually a UCLA program. And practitioners can get certified and trained in this 15-week module program and work with students on all of these different executive functioning skills. And sorry, not executive function, social skills. They work on 15 different sets of social skills. And the peers program, in addition to being offered by individual practitioners, it's actually embedded in landmark colleges in-person programs as well as their virtual programs. I'm hoping that other colleges around the country are going to start to offer the peers program as well. I have had a lot of contact with Dr. Carol Frankenberger, who is a psychoeducational practitioner, and she offers the peers program through her practice. And then another program, which is newer on the horizon, is called My Best Social Life. And a young man named Jeremy Hamburg has created this amazing platform. And there are actually thousands of autistic adults around the country and even outside of the US that join this community. And it's a lifelong social skills community. So people join this and they have modules, one-on-one modules with a coach to learn social skills. And then there are weekly community calls where you call online and you get to talk to people from all over the world who are part of the group. And there are virtual social activities that happen. There have even been lifelong friendships and even marriages that have happened, and some matchmaking organizations that have collaborated with My Best Social Skills. So anyway, all this information, is on the document because I want all of you in Cindy's class, whether you're parents, whether you're school counselors or IECs, to have all of this data and be able to share it with anybody that could benefit from it.
Thank you. Well, and I think that that's such a crucial area. Sometimes we as parents and as counselors think, oh, well, all colleges offer these kinds of transitions or, have the social emotional skills or executive functioning. So at what level are different colleges? What are we looking for when we're helping students or parents to navigate that transition?
Yeah, that's such an important question, and it's often the first question that I get from parents. So legally in the United States, all colleges are required to provide accommodations. So students who have an IEP or a 504 in high school often have things like extended time for testing, noise-reduced environment, use of assistive technology, and a variety of other accommodations. And so when students apply to college, as long as they have an IEP or a 504 or a psychological evaluation done by a professional, the college will acknowledge and look at these documents, and then they will determine, based on the accommodations the student has had and the accommodations that they offer, they will say to a family, these are the accommodations that we will approve for your student to use in college. So that's a standard. Next level up from that would be learning support services. And learning support services can be any one of a variety of things. It can be support with academics, which means tutoring in courses. It could be executive function coaching. It could be social skills training, and it could even be social programming. The level of services that are provided by a college are very different from one school to the next. Out of about 4,000 colleges that we have in the US, there's less than 750 schools that offer anything beyond those legally required accommodations. So it's imperative that families get in touch with the Disability Services Office, or some of them are now called accessibility services, which is a more PC term, to find out what learning support services do you offer. And the next question is, who provides those supports? Some schools, it's peers. Some schools, it's grad students. And at the colleges that really invest in their supports, they have trained professionals with college degrees who provide these supports to students. The third level, so the first was accommodations legally required everywhere. The second was learning support services, variety of different kind of services, variety of people that might provide them. The third level, which is the most robust level, is a fee-for-service program. And so what that means is the college actually has within their accessibility or disability office staff who are paid to provide services to students for academic support, for executive functioning, and maybe even for social skills. There is a fee, and it might be a semester-based fee or a year-long fee that the family pays separate from your costs of attendance for the college. Unfortunately, financial aid usually doesn't cover that fee. It's an out-of-pocket expense. So it's something for families to consider. If their students need this level of support, they really need to know what the colleges charge, because it has to be part of the budget when they're figuring out what they can afford for college. The fee for service can range from $1,200 a semester to even $6,000 or more, depending on how many supports the student will have, how many hours of service they're going to get, and who are the people that are administering those services to them.
So do all students who do go transition, are they all getting a 4-year degree? Aren't there some programs that students can go to and still experience some of this and get a certificate? I know I have a friend who, she just texted me this weekend about her son who is neurodivergent, and UC Davis has a great program. And he went through that program and she was just so thrilled because it gave him so many skills and things, and he got a certificate, but he didn't get a degree. So there's still value for students at all different levels still experience some of these things.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's absolutely true. And California actually has tons of programs, both in the California State University system, as well as what you mentioned in the UC system. Programs where students who have varying disabilities can come and get a certificate. And it might be in business, it might be in customer service, it might be in working with animals. There's different areas that they can come, and they often get help with living independently. There may even be a special dorm or a special floor where there are specially trained resident assistants to help them with daily living, social skills, executive functioning, academic tutoring. All of that stuff may be encompassed in a wraparound program where they get a certificate. And then the next level up from that would be a 2-year a 2-year associate's degree. So there are many colleges, there are technical colleges, all kinds of schools that offer an associate's degree for students who, want to take that college level work and they feel like they can, but they don't necessarily intend to go into a field that requires a 4-year degree, nor do they feel like they have the endurance, to do a 4-year program. So there certainly are a lot of options. And in addition to what's on the college campus, there's an intermediary step between high school and either a certificate program, a 2-year or 4-year degree. There are a group of transition programs, and they really provide a springboard or a stepping stone for students who are thinking that they want to go into a college setting, not really confident that they're ready, but they want to try maybe 1 or 2 college courses, having supports in place. They want to try living somewhere away from home where there are people helping them in an environment, learning how to live independently. And so there are a lot of programs that I work with that are great, and they really help bridge a gap for these students by connecting them with the local college where they don't have to be matriculated in a college in order to take a course on a campus, to try it out. And if they try it out and it's overwhelming and it's too intense, then they can withdraw or they can just audit the course, and then at least they got the experience. On the other hand, if they go and they take a course or two, and they do well and they build their confidence and their competence, and they might be ready a year later to transition and go into college. So there are so many great opportunities out there for students to explore pathways. And one of the things that I say to everybody all the time when I talk about my work is that I am helping people to normalize a non-traditional pathway for neurodivergent students who are pursuing higher education. And I think it's also important to say that a lot of families come to me and say, but we want our student to do the traditional pathway. And even the pathway that we all think of as traditional, you and I know, is less than 60% of students that go to four-year college actually graduate in 4 years, right? So what once was a traditional path really isn't anymore. And so I try to really inform families that there are a lot of choices, and what's most important is that we figure out what your student wants and needs, what their dreams are, what supports and scaffolding they need, and where are the places that are set up to enable them to thrive and to make those dreams happen.
Right. And is this only for US students?
Oh, no, it's definitely for international students too. Many international students come to colleges all over the United States. We know that. And so I have a student right now who's in Malaysia, actually, working on figuring out what her next step is and coming to the state. So there definitely are openings. I mean, there are some restrictions in terms of there being some colleges and some programs that get funding from state agencies and regional centers. So if you're not a US resident, you can't go. But there certainly are a lot of organizations that are privately run and not affiliated with colleges where students can go for a transition, and they absolutely welcome and support international students.
So you mentioned earlier, April, about making friends, and that be my best social life, about the social side of dating and things like that. So what about that aspect?
So in terms of these transition programs, they do a lot of support around the social skills, you know, um, because they realize that students are coming out of high school where they most likely lived at home unless they went to boarding school. And so they need a lot of help with learning how to navigate, dealing with a roommate, sharing your space and your resources, right? And some of them have no dating experience, and some of them also have had difficulty making social relationships. A lot of families I work with say, oh, my student, has lots of younger kids that they like to be with. They volunteer at a day camp, but they don't have friends their own age. They don't date, they haven't dated yet. So how do they develop these skills? And there are programs where they can go. There are summer transition programs where they can go and have these simulated experiences for a couple of weeks. And like I mentioned, the peers and the My Best Social Life programs, are there too. But there are some colleges that have like weekly events, and even peer mentors who invite the students to come to the events. Some colleges even go so far as to say to the students, you're enrolled in support services, so you are required to go to X number of social events this term. You can pick the ones that sound the best to you, but you've got to go and you've got to show up, and their peer mentor will meet with them and take them there. So, for students who have deficits in their social skills, it's imperative that they find a college that has these extra layers of support in. Otherwise, students are likely to isolate and not join clubs and not go to social events, and go to their classes, but not develop that personal social life that is a hugely important part of the whole college experience.
Right, right. So true. Very, very true. So as counselors and advisors, we're kind of that third party. So we see this and we want to support our students. What are some questions or things we should be asking colleges so that we can better help our students and our families?
So the most important question is, tell me the profile of the neurodivergent students that are successful at your school. Describe to me what those students are like, and so I specifically will ask, do you have students on the spectrum? And if so, can you tell me? What are they majoring in? What clubs are they involved in? I want to know what their life on that campus looks like. What are the different communities that are available to them? And students with ADHD, students with various learning disabilities. What kind of assistive technology support do you have to help these students be successful in the classroom? Some of the other things that you want to make sure you find out is what kind of training do the learning support people provide to the faculty about learning disabilities and related disorders, and about how to respect and work with and accommodate these students, and not to single them out and not to shame them. I always recommend to my families, when you visit colleges, contact the learning support office. Make sure that you go visit, you chat with them, you check out the place, because this is going to be a main community where your student's going to spend a lot of time while they're at college. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with it, that the staff feel friendly, that a student comes away from that saying, I could see myself going there, and I could see myself hanging out in the lounge with other students there, beyond just going there for their testing or meeting with their coach. So you really want to get a sense of who a student is holistically, and knowing that the learning support needs and finding their academic fit is one stream of all of the other pieces. You and I know we look at financial fit, we look at academic fit, we look at personal fit. Another thing that's really, really important now is transportation. I have a student right now who's at a transition program, and he had never gone in an Uber, never gone on a public bus. He's now living in an apartment with other students and taking public transportation to his internship. He takes a shuttle to go to the airport to fly home for breaks. So he now feels competent and confident in navigating transportation. So there's all of these things that are really important to look at when your student is neurodivergent. How do they find the resources to access the things that they want to do? How do they get the help?
It is so crucial. And yeah, those kinds of things, like just learning how to do an Uber or to catch a bus. So often our students, their parents have been such strong advocates for them for so many years that the students haven't had to develop those skills or learn through that experience. So identifying that and helping, and I like how in the beginning you talk about having a packet, an assessment packet that you can go through so you can see where students are. So
yes, when I do the profile evaluation, they get a report from me, and it goes through all of these different developmental domains, so they have a clear understanding of where, based on my professional opinion, where their students have areas that they need to develop further before they're ready to go to college. And for some students, I might say, you're ready, and this is the level of support you need. And for some, I say, you will be ready, but you need to transition first, and that's really important, because I'm giving them these guidelines for their next steps. And then if they choose to work with me on the next steps, they do, or if they choose to work with someone else, they have that option too. But they could take this report and they can go to a learning support office and look at it and go, okay, we need an executive functioning coach recommended 3 to 4 times a week. Is that something you provide? Because they need that. They need that handbook.
yeah. Well, and one of the exciting things about what we've learned about neurodivergent students and their opportunities and options is they do have lots of choices. In the past they might have thought it was A or B, and now you've explained to us there are all these range in between. And so that's very exciting. As a counselor and advisor, it's nice to be able to share that with parents. And I know you said you have a document, so we'll have that available as part of the this discussion. So I'll make that available. So April, thank you very much. Is there any closing words of advice you would like to share?
Yes, and I think that this goes out to parents especially, but really to counselors as well, is one of the things that you really need to tease apart when you're looking at this transition from high school to college is, how much support, how much reliance students have had on their families. A lot of parents feel very protective of their kids and they're afraid to let go. A lot of families have been their students' strongest advocate from birth to now, and they don't know how to let go. And so there are also programs out there to help parents make this separation and transition your own relationship from being the parent who makes all the decisions to being a coach and an advocate for your students. We've all heard different phrases kind of describing different kinds of parenting. We've heard of helicopter parenting, and we've heard of the tiger mama, and then during the pandemic, we've heard of bubble wrap parenting, you know, um, and so some of this has been, even though these terms may sound negative, it's been absolutely necessary for parents to be this involved so their kids could be successful to get through K to 12. But it's absolutely imperative to know you can't just rip the bubble wrap off and send your kid out in the world and fingers and toes crossed and hope for the best.
Right.
So you've got to be honest with yourself and honest with your kids, to say, all right, where are we really at and what are we ready for? Knowing that there are pathways, absolutely, for every student to figure out their next steps after high school.
And I echo that as well. There are pathways and opportunities, and there are going to be more and more. And that
Yes.
makes our role as counselors and advisors such a pivotal one, because you become that fulcrum or that point between the student and the parent that help them be able to move forward. So what we do is extremely important, and what you do is extremely important. And thank you for
Thank you.
joining me and talking about this today. It's been very beneficial.
Well, thank you. And to all of your students that are watching this video, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My business is ldcollegeexpert.com, and my email is april@ldcollegeexpert.com. And I am an educator at heart and a business person, and I like to train IECs and work collaboratively with you and with counselors to support you and give you access to resources that you need. So feel free to reach out at any time if I can be of service in your work.
Thank you, April. Thank you very
Sure.
much.
Okay.
Well, everybody else have a good day, and we hope you look forward to other videos about topics in our class and in our lives as education consultants. So thank you. All right.